I watched Mark's Iron Lung, and I have a lot of opinions. So let's get into it. First, let's get the glazing out of the way because I have been a fan of Mark's since I want to say the early Amnesia days. So like 2012, 2013 ish. And I've been following his journey with like varying levels of commitment since then. Now I've kind of grown out of watching gameplay videos, but I continue to follow his journey as a creative because he's just someone that I grew up with and I grew up watching and somebody that I really have looked up to in terms of being somebody that is so dedicated to the idea of if you want it, you're going to get it. If you want it, you have to go and get it. And it's been so amazing getting to see him grow as a creator over the past decade. Like I'm talking I've seen him go from being king of the squirrels to Markiplier TV all the way to In Space and all of his not choose your own adventure games because you can't I don't think that we can technically call them that, but all of his uh decision based series, I guess is the way to put it. All the way to the millions of dollars that he's raised for charity to Unis Honest. I mean, I'm currently wearing a Camp Unis Honest t-shirt as we speak. I'm really about this life. And I have a Unis Honest water bottle next to me, for hydration purposes that I've been using since Unis Honest days. Um, and now finally we're at Iron Lung, which has been something that has been in the works for 3 years. And talking about this is so exciting for me because I'm a film major. I was a film major. I graduated with my degree in film, and I really understand the drive that he has. And I understand how much work it really takes because it takes a lot of work to make a movie. It takes a lot of work to even get the gumption to say I'm going to write a movie. Each phase of filmmaking takes so much work and so much dedication, and I understand why he was locked up for 3 years. I literally get it. I get it. Um, I've made my own short films. I've written my own short films. I've won awards for writing short films. I've done in some ways what he has done, but in short form ways. So I get it. And I when I was watching the movie, I was like, I can feel the passion, I can feel the excitement, I can feel how genuine it all was. I could feel that he was creating because he wanted to create, not because he wanted to profit. And that was so refreshing in this current climate of like remakes. Well, technically, actually, that was so refreshing in this current climate of cash grabs. And I'm glad that he used something that he was so passionate about, a video game that he was so passionate about, to kind of jumpstart his, I guess, career in the filmmaking industry. Yeah. Yeah, I saw a lot of amazing things in Iron Lung. Outside of just like the plot of it and outside of just the creation of it, I saw that he just wanted to make something great. And I think he did. I will say though, I do have some opinions. I don't think the movie was perfect, but I do think it was good. I'm just gonna get that out of the way now. I don't think the movie was perfect, but I want to get into. I want to give a in-depth kind of analysis into why I feel the way I do because I think it deserves it and I think it warrants it and I think that Markiplier would prefer that I did not spend my time reviewing this film just glazing him. So, with that being said, let's get into it. I want to give a quick disclaimer. I showed up like 5 minutes late to the premiere and missed a portion of the beginning monologue where you could see the blood sea and like the what do you call it? I guess it was like a pier. I missed maybe like 5 minutes of that narration, and I'm not sure that I lost a lot of context from it, but I think that it's important to mention that I missed that in case me missing that first like 5 minutes was important to my understanding of anything else later on. I also want to say that I have not actually played the game at all or watched any playthroughs of it. And I don't have any like information or knowledge on the background lore. And I want to say this because I think that the film, in a way, kind of depends on you going in knowing that, or knowing that source material, which is good or bad depending on who you ask. But for me, it required, I think, more heavy lifting and like me like manifesting connections that might not have actually been there. Additionally, I think that because the film, in my opinion, depends on you already understanding the source material or knowing the source material, in execution, I believe that the way that it revealed the lore that was already involved in the game, because I've been informed by my constituents that there were liberties added and that there were creative elements added to flesh out the world a little bit. Um, that the way that they conveyed it was a little confusing, and I will explain why. In the film, things are kickstarted pretty quickly. We find ourselves in the sub with the main character, the convict. He doesn't really have a name for the first half of the movie. And his sentence is that he is being forced to explore the blood sea and is literally welded into a submarine to do that. His job is to explore the blood ocean floor and take pictures of the surroundings and find anything that will tell them any answers as to why, I guess, the world exploded or why a bunch of planets exploded, I think. That being said, pretty quickly he does stumble upon a big old skeleton. He pretty quickly informs his handlers, who are like in the lab that control the depth of the submarine, that he discovered a skeleton. He The way he explains it is that he found a skeleton, but there's something else out there, which was a little confusing because the camera that's being used is a X-ray camera that is kind of explained by him taking a photo when when he was up in the lab and accidentally irradiating everybody up there, which was fucked up. But even though this happened, I was kind of under the impression, because of the way they talked about it, that the skeletons and the creature were two separate entities, but I think they were actually the same thing. It was a little confusing the way that the monster alien thing was portrayed, because like I said, didn't have any lore going in. To me, it was like there's like some like phantasmal creature punching the sub, and he just happens to miss getting the picture of it, and they don't really believe him because they're just worried about getting the samples of the skeleton. So they hook a arm to the iron lung, to the sub, and they say, okay, ram it and then get us a sample so that we can see if this is worth anything in our survival. He is like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I can't blame him, because every time, like, I can't blame him for not wanting to do it anymore, because he kept getting his head like knocked around in that sub by some like alien being. So I don't blame him for that. But his handler keeps saying it's bigger than them, and like I said, he's given new instructions to get the sample, and I wouldn't say he agrees to it, but he doesn't have a choice. So, and this is the setup. Basically, this is the setup for what is to be expected for the rest of the film. I want to say that I am like struck by the visuals of the film. The cinematography is super compelling, and it really is a driving force of the movie. There are not many sets. And then honestly, in the beginning, we're just in the island itself. Outside of the very first scene where you are like seeing the blood ocean and like the pier or whatever, but really the whole set in the beginning is just being inside of the iron lung, which is cool. It's supposed to be a very isolationist movie. I don't know if that's the right like term, but you're supposed to be in isolation. And the actual format of the sub is very simple, but it's also very effective. I feel like it makes sense, all things considered, because he's a prisoner there. It's not supposed to be super complicated. You push the button and you navigate. There's nothing else for you to be doing here. And like I said, it added to the whole prison feel. I also thought that Mark's costuming was really cool. It really gave insight into what was left of the outside world. Part of me wishes that it was on streaming already so that I could like scrub back and like look at it to really give you more specifics about what I enjoyed about the costuming and the makeup and the hair. But until then, just know I liked it. Just understand that I liked it. That being said, my initial issue with the film is that because I hadn't actually known any of the original lore, I was having a very hard time understanding why I should care about the convict and why he was on the mission and the mission itself. I think that the way it was written was like really ahead of the viewer's understanding of what was happening, if that makes sense. Like, it was, like I said, it felt like it was written as if the viewer already knew what was happening. But if you don't know what's happening, then it feels like it's being written ahead of the viewer's understanding. The characters are reacting very intensely to conversations that I don't actually have the context for. There are a lot of yelling and emotions and raised voices that fall flat on me because I don't know what we're talking about really. Like, I don't really fully get why I should care yet. Pretty early on, the convict starts crying. And for a viewer with very minimal context aside from this is this guy's jail sentence, it's a little like jarring and dissonant. Because I wasn't feeling what the convict was feeling or like understanding it outside of bits and pieces, the high levels of intensity and emotion fell upon deaf ears in a way. And like, spoiler alert, I'm not gonna lie, left me feeling like the convict didn't go anywhere emotionally. At least, well, yeah, it just felt like he wasn't going anywhere emotionally. Then there's the teetering on whether or not the convict was actually going to be saved or not. Or actually going to be released from the sub, I should say. I knew he wasn't ever going to be released because it was actually spoiled to me by my friends. We were talking about going to see the movie. But the way that I was understanding it and the way that it was kind of told to me by accident, it was supposed to be a big secret that was revealed in the end. And in the movie, this secret is not held very well at all, I don't think. He alludes to it. It's alluded to multiple times throughout the film. In the beginnings, especially, where he's like, I know I'm not gonna be let out, basically. And it's like, okay. I mean, since you keep mentioning it, now the viewer is like, okay, duh, he's not gonna make it out. Provided they don't already have the, like lore, the context of the lore. The fact that the handler can never give a straight answer on whether or not he'll actually be freed from this, I think would be a lot more effective if the convict had not commented on it so many times so early on, even before he discovered the secret like medkit and wires and everything. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like it inadvertently spoiled itself by the like funny quips and jip and stuff like that were being made in reference to it. I honestly believe that it would have been even more effective if even the mention of him not being the first person on the vessel wasn't mentioned until way later. Like, I just think that the gotcha moments in the dialogue spoil the surprise and later moments of emotional impact. Also, unfortunately, I really did not get the pendant thing and the brother thing. I didn't get the connection, I didn't get the tears, and I don't get the associated flashbacks. Like, I get it, but I didn't get it in the context of the movie. Like, I understand that this is something that is important to him because it is connected to his brothers, but who were his brothers? The flashbacks, there were like 2 flashbacks. One was just of him as a kid standing next to other kids, and then the other one I think was just him as a kid standing next to other kids but at a different angle. So I don't really understand what was supposed to be the impact of that when it was brought up, if that makes sense. And also, where did the pendant come from, and which specific brother was this referring to? Because later on in the film, we learn that there's multiple brothers. He says brothers, plural. So which brother? And why is this pendant that he has on him has multiple different shots hanging off of his wrist? Why is that so important to him? I think that in isolating him so much and to such a degree, the film neglects to flesh out that specific connection, even though that connection was seemingly very important to the character, if that makes sense. In my opinion, the film attempts to set up a deeper relationship than what is actually planned for. The flashbacks of the convict as a child are disjointed and unfortunately do not particularly contribute to the viewer's experience or the viewer's understanding of the convict story. For the movie to be as long as it is, because it's 2 hours and it's just over 2 hours. I think it would have benefited from taking us out of the iron lung a little bit more and with more intention, and I will explain why later. So the middle of the movie is a little hard to describe for me. A lot happened, but I found myself growing fatigued by the movie's dependence on dialogue being the only driving force of moving the plot along. Well, not the only driving force, but the biggest driving force of moving the plot along. In essence, the convict locked in. He made discoveries on what was actually on the inside of the sub, which basically confirmed that he was not the first one on the sub. He skillfully mapped out the ocean floor in a really cool sequence. That was actually one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie, of him mapping out the ocean floor and doing the back and forth between the map and the navigation center. And he discovered a wreckage. And apparently the comms that came from the wreckage. I'm really summarizing this part because, like I said, the movie really depended on dialogue to understand the ins and outs of what was happening, and it required the viewer to really hone in on what was being said. But unfortunately, there were moments where the dialogue was very muffled or just was not discernible. I could not understand what was being said just because maybe the mixing or maybe not the mixing, but maybe just the enunciation from the actors involved. If I'm wrong here in kind of summarizing that, please let me know and please clarify it in the comments, because I don't think that I'm gonna get this part perfect. I think that the way that the middle of the film progresses is not for everybody. I've been reading reviews since I've walked out of the theater just to get a sense of what everybody's thinking, and there's a lot of differing opinions. Some people are saying it's boring and overly drawn out, whereas other people are this is the creepiest thing since sliced bread. And I personally think that it lies somewhere in the middle. To clarify, I was not actually bored watching the movie. I was engaged with it the entire time, but that was by choice. I came in with curiosity and an open mind and excitement to reap the fruits of Mark's 3 years of labor, but a feeling that I could not shake was there was an irritation in the back of my mind because it felt like a lot of plot points, there was not that much follow through. There was a lot of setup, but not that much follow through. And this is where the flashbacks come in, because the flashbacks as they are now do not really rein everything in or complete everything, in my opinion. I would have loved if, for the purpose of making the submarine feel smaller, similar to how the convict was feeling more and more trapped as the movie progressed, we were actually taken out of the submarine and into the situation in which the convict and his brothers blew up the station. If for let's say like 15 minutes, we were taken along the ride for that tragedy and the whole betrayal that was indicated to have happened. I say that because imagine this. You have this full flashback. You have the convict and his brothers doing their thing. You have the tragedy happen. You have the tragedy unfold. At the end of the flashback is a scene where you see the convict and you see the convict staring at the carnage and the horror of seeing so many people die at his brother's hands, just for him to end up taking the fall for it. And then from there, us just being pulled back into the sub with the convict in solitude, living out his sentence for a crime that he did not commit. And then maybe it melts into the scene of the sub flooding and then him being out into the blood ocean with the big monster thing. I just feel like it would have been more impactful if we saw what broke him, like, directly. I think that I just think that it would have contributed to the emotional impact of finding out that it was not his fault and why he started having his psychic break in the middle of the movie. That being said, I feel like this would also clarify why the convict was hearing things. The British woman over the loudspeakers, whose name I also cannot remember at the moment, is like far more clearly, in this case, I think would be an indicator that this is a broken man who has seen some things. I'm going to reiterate that I haven't played the game and I haven't seen playthroughs and I am not at all familiar with the original lore, but I do think, with that being said, that the movie plays out like a video game. Maybe too much so. The mediums of film versus video games are not directly interchangeable. I think that they lend each other well to each other, but it's not like one-to-one. And I say that, think The Last of Us, right? Think The Last of Us. Beautiful game. Beautiful 2 games. Beautiful game. But then when you watch the series, it is so many creative liberties are taken with the show that are immensely different from the game. But it's not just adding extra lore. It's literally how things play out. It's literally how you see things. But it still gets the same point across, right? We still get from A to B and to C. It's just the way that we get there is a different experience. I just think that the way that the movie is written currently and the way that it plays out currently feels too much like how a video game plays out. It's a little too stagnant for me, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Here's some good though. I will say this. Despite that like stagnation with the way that the movie played out structurally, I think that Mark's performance really started to settle in the middle of the movie. And it was a lot easier for me to suspend my disbelief because at first going in, I was like, oh my God, it's Markiplier. But by the middle to end of the movie, I was like, okay, this is Simon, the convict, and this is someone that I care about. I'm not really sure the order in which they film the scenes because with movies, they don't always film everything in like from beginning to end. They film it as they want to film it. But Mark's like his persona, which is huge, really washed away just to be Simon the convict. I have followed all of Mark's major acting projects, and I can really say with full confidence that this was his best performance yet. And like, while I have my qualms about the narrative structure of the film, I left the theater caring about Simon, which says a lot. That being said, the ending. I think the ending works, and it ties everything together. However, it is kind of like you duct taping something that was already kind of falling apart. And I don't mean that I don't mean that to say everything was shitty because it wasn't shitty. I just think that on its own, the ending was like a great climax to what was happening and a great wrap up to the themes of the film. However, with the issues with the lead up and the follow through and the structure of the middle of the movie, such a grandiose ending kind of falls flat and leaves more to be desired because it satisfies something that I wasn't really looking to be. It satisfies something that I think was not appropriately set up. But it is very clear that Simon just wanted to live until he believed that it became bigger than him. So he sacrificed his life. And I think that it was repentance for the lives that were lost on the station. But me saying that is because I kind of had to like go back and really think about the themes of the movie and what he actually went through. I didn't feel that way when as soon as I stepped out of the theater. I thought, "Oh, okay." But having time to think about it now, I genuinely believe that the change in opinion, change in disposition, decision to actually let it be bigger than him and to retrieve the box or whatever and let himself die was repentance for the lives that were lost on the station, regardless of whether or not he was actually responsible for it, because he was still there. To summarize, I think that this movie was great. I think it was a great first movie. There were issues like muffled and indiscernible dialogue during very important moments and kind of confusing emotional peaks and some missing follow through, like I have mentioned a couple times. But I think that calling this movie bad is disingenuous and insincere, because it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's huge. It's a huge idea. It's a huge concept. It's just it's clearly Mark's first big stepping stone into much larger creative endeavors. And I am really, really excited to see what else he makes. It makes me want to make something, and I'm inspired. Yeah. I want to say congratulations to Mark for putting this together, for writing, directing, acting, editing this movie. It is a feat that is not even remotely easy to achieve, and he did it. And I am proud to say that I've been here since the beginning. But yeah, I don't want to give my number review on this movie because I don't think that it is actually beneficial to anything, but those are my thoughts. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know how you feel about it, and let me know how you feel about how I feel about it in the comments. Thanks for watching. I don't really know how to end this, but yeah, thanks for watching. Bye. Mwah.